As we record this, it's nearly time to celebrate the new year and a new decade. How do you wish someone a Happy New Year in English? And what's that strange song English speakers sing on New Year's Eve? Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hi, I'm Reza.
And my name's Craig.
And with nearly 50 years of teaching experience between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it up to the next level. How are you, Craig?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Reza?
I'm doing very well, and I'm really looking forward to the new year.
Me too. Just a quick piece of news before we get into the content of this week's podcast. Some of you AIRCaholics out there, AIRCaholics, AIRC-aholics, that's people who listen to Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig frequently and have done for a long time, you may have noticed that you have not received our monthly newsletter for December. The reason for that is because we have exceeded our limit for our newsletter, so we're going to look for a different service provider. So please be patient. You will be getting newsletters from us, and if you'd like to sign up to receive it in the future, then just go to inglespodcast.com where you can write your email address and you'll get that as soon as we have found another email provider.
So apologies to all those alcoholics. By the way, if you're an alcoholic, you drink too much alcohol, you're perfectly welcome to listen to the podcast as well. We have nothing against that. In fact, around about Christmas and New Year, I become a semi-alcoholic myself.
When you spend time with the family.
Exactly, yeah. So no problem at all. Have as many drinks as you like and listen to the podcast. It might be easier to listen to after a few drinks, in fact.
Before we speak about New Year vocabulary, we have got an email from our friend Pilar from France, who is a film buff. That's B-U-F-F. A film buff is someone who really, really likes movies and films. Reza, would you like to read Pilar's email?
She writes, a little email to tell you that I was very happy to listen to your podcast about cinema. That was on inglespodcast.com/289, episode 289. She says, I'm a huge fan of cinema in general and of classical, she means classic in particular. You talked about films that I really love, maybe most of all In the Heat of the Night and Casablanca.
They are classics.
Classic films. She goes on. Also, I am keen on pre-code films from the early 30s.
I don't know what she means by pre-code films.
I know what she means.
Pre-sound, maybe?
Not necessarily. There was a code introduced about 1934-5, I think just before the war, which restricted things like bad language and sexual references and that type of thing. But there was a brief period at the end of the silent movie period and the beginning of talkies, where they began to talk in films, where there was no code. So they call that the pre-code era. We're talking about 4 or 5 years. And some incredibly daring films for the time were released with a lot of kind of sexual innuendo and topics that were later kind of ignored. A lot of things about powerful women, in leading roles, which kind of got suppressed then for many decades after. It's a very interesting period of Hollywood.
I did not know that. That is interesting.
So she goes on. I'm also keen on pre-code films from the early 30s. In fact, it's one of the reasons I'm trying to improve my English, to be able to understand those films in original version. And because sometimes they don't have any subtitles.
That's very good motivation. Well done.
And speaking about quotes, I love this one from Mae West. Mae West said, "Good girls go to heaven, but bad girls go everywhere."
I like that too. And then there's a test, isn't there, from Pilar? She tests us with a line. Did you know this line?
Yes, I knew where it was from. I didn't have to check it. I think I know.
Pilar says, to finish, do you know elegí un mal día para dejar de fumar? Where's that from, Reza?
Well, the original would be I chose a bad day to give up smoking, and it's from Airplane.
Yep, 1980.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a parody disaster movie, and it's very, very funny. And I've got two very short quotes that I'm sure Pilar would know from the movie, two very short dialogues. Should we read them?
Okay.
So let me set the scene first. I'll set the scene. So it's at the check-in desk, and there's a lady working at the check-in desk, and the star of the movie, Ted Stryker, goes to check in, and you be the lady.
Nervous?
Yes, very.
First time?
No, I've been nervous before. I've been nervous lots of times. And the other one, which is really famous, the plane's going to crash.
So you're Ted again, and I'm a doctor. I'm Dr. Rumak.
So imagine the plane's going to crash, and the hero, Ted Stryker, says, the plane's going to crash? Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
So again, a play on words with the name. It's a very, very funny film. If you have not seen it, then we both recommend you check out Airplane.
There are lots of gags in that film. I remember there's another thing. It's something that is a line repeated throughout the film. He says, I have a drinking problem. And every time he does that, he kind of picks up a drink and throws it on his face. That's his problem. He can't find his mouth. His drinking problem is he can't aim his apuntar correctly.
So let's look at some New Year vocabulary. As we record this, we are in December 2019, just before Christmas and the New Year. So there couldn't be a better time for looking at some New Year vocabulary. But we've spoken about Christmas and vocabulary before, Reza, haven't we?
That's right. Quite a long time ago now. For you hardcore, that's nucleo duro. You hardcore long-term listeners who've been listening
alcoholics.
for years, complete alcoholics, people who, can't be cured. You might remember that in episode 82, inglespodcast.com/82, we did a Christmas and New Year special. So a mixture of the two things. Mm-hmm. This episode is only going to be about New Year, and we'll try not to repeat anything from episode 82. So go back to episode 82 if you want to hear more stuff.
And to see the show notes for this episode and the vocabulary we're going to speak about, go to inglespodcast.com/292. Reza, one word that our listeners may hear this time of year is Hogmanay. What's Hogmanay?
Well, it's an English word, but really it's come from Scotland. It's come from Scottish language. But now we use it in English, and it means New Year in Scotland. So it's a big deal. A big deal means it's very important.
And I can remember growing up in London, I remember around about this time, or especially on New Year's Eve, that's the 31st of December, the eve, the day before New Year, they had on television Scottish people playing bagpipes, wearing Scottish costumes and kilts. And I always wondered, why is it so strong, so popular in Scotland?
Well, I knew it was very important, but I've done a little bit of extra research on internet to confirm what I thought, and I've been really surprised by some of the information I found. So I did already know that for many Scottish people, Hogmanay is maybe even more important than Christmas. And for many people, Edinburgh is the place to be, Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland, for a good Hogmanay party for New Year celebrations.
Have you been to Edinburgh for Hogmanay?
I've been on holiday in the summer, but never in Hogmanay. I think I'd love to go.
Me too.
I'd love to go.
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't like the idea that nowadays they charge you money just to be in the street. Did you
Really?
know that? Yes, you got to pay to be in the street. So yes, they charge you a fee just to be in the streets because it's so popular. I guess it's a way of controlling how many people go. So imagine how popular it is to go to Edinburgh for Hogmanay that you have to pay to be in the street, And I'll tell you another very interesting fact about Hogmanay. The extreme nature of this really surprises me, that there was no public holiday in Scotland for Christmas for about 400 years.
Really?
Yes, and that only stopped in 1958. Yes, only in 1958 did they start to have a public holiday for Christmas in Scotland.
So before 1958, they worked on Christmas Day?
They worked on Christmas Day. There was no public holiday. Yet, both the 1st and the 2nd of January have always been and still are public holidays in Scotland, unlike the rest of the UK. In the UK, outside Scotland, in England, Wales, Northern Ireland, we don't get a holiday on the 2nd of January.
That's right.
But they do in Scotland because it's so important for them to make up, I guess, for them not having Christmas in the past. Now they're lucky. They get the best of both worlds. They do get a Christmas holiday now, and they get the 1st and 2nd of January as a holiday.
So I'm guessing this is somehow connected with the church, maybe the Church of Scotland. Is that what's behind this?
That's what it is. You might be thinking, oh, wow, are Scottish people not religious? Don't they care about Christmas?
Some are very religious.
Very religious. The birth of Jesus, Christmas. Well, that's exactly the thing. They really do care about it. So it's a historical reason. Following the Protestant Reformation, the Church of Scotland, the official Church of Scotland, which is not the official Church of England, by the way, they are different churches. It's the Presbyterian Church, which is the official Church of Scotland. They deemed, that means they considered one specific day for Christmas, 25th of December, unworthy of celebration because it doesn't say in the Bible what day Jesus was born. It is not mentioned. The 25th of December was just invented much later. So they, for religious reasons, refused to celebrate the birth of Jesus on that day.
So the 25th of December was just invented as a day, say, hey, let's celebrate Christmas on this day, even though there's no historical reason for it.
Exactly. So they decided there's no Christmas Day. We'll celebrate New Year because that's obvious. 1st of January, it's a new year, but we don't know when Jesus was born and we don't want to get it wrong because of respect for religion. So they decided to ban Christmas Day. In England, that didn't happen because the Church of England is the Anglican Church. And actually, the Anglican Church, although it's Protestant, is very close to Catholic traditions, much closer than the Church of Scotland. So that's the reason why they have an extra special New Year holiday in Scotland, because they didn't really bother with Christmas.
I did not know that, so that's something I've learned doing this podcast. On New Year's Eve, when the clock strikes 12 in Scotland and in many, many places around the world, there's a traditional song that is sung. And I'm sure you've heard it. It's called Auld Lang Syne. That's AULDLANGSYNE. Auld Lang Syne.
Yes, Auld Lang Syne. Again, it's Scottish language, Scots. And our next piece of information is also to do with Scotland. As you can see, Scotland plays a very, very important role in New Year. For some reason, that tradition has stayed. We think very much of Scotland in the UK for New Year. A first footer. Do you know what that is, Chris?
I do not. What is a first footer? Is it someone who steps through the door first and puts their foot through the door first?
Basically, yes, but specifically for New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So around about midnight, not far off midnight, guests go to a house to celebrate New Year's Eve and bring in the new year. And that guest or guests should bring gifts with them. So the first person who crosses your door, the first footer, they should bring whiskey, is traditional. Not surprising, it's a very Scottish tradition. Shortbread.
What's shortbread?
It's a type of Scottish biscuit, still very popular today, made with a lot of butter.
So it's sweet?
It's sweet, yeah. So a buttery sweet biscuit, maybe salt, coal.
Carbon.
carbon, and bread. They're the typical things. Above all, I would say whiskey and shortbread and coal.
If you have enough whiskey, you can forget the other things. They don't matter.
They forgive you. So it's not so common as in the past, but it does still happen. It particularly in rural parts of Scotland, it happens. It also happens in Northern Ireland, where I come from, and the Isle of Man. Though these days it's usually just the whiskey. However, my mum, for example, who's alive and well, she is, I guess, a typical Northern Irish Presbyterian Protestant, like a typical Church of Scotland Presbyterian Protestant. And so her ancestors were Scottish, and she remembers first footers in Northern Ireland passing through her door when she was a child of her parents and bringing coal and whiskey. She has a memory of it. And that was in the city. That was in Belfast. It wasn't in the countryside. So it definitely is not something that's made up. I know someone, my mum, who's seen it with their own eyes.
So if I visit your mum around New Year, I should take her a bottle of whiskey.
Yes.
Right. Or some coal.
Yes. No, just bring the whiskey because she doesn't drink whiskey, but I do. I love that.
I'll remember that.
By the way, if you ever meet her, she doesn't say New Year's Eve. Like some Scottish and Irish people, she still says Old Year's Night. Have you ever heard that before?
I haven't, no. Old Year's Night, because it's the last night of the old year.
Yep.
Makes sense. Mm-hmm. So as Reza said before, Christmas and New Year's Day are both public holidays, which means nobody works and the banks are closed. And that's where we get the expression bank holiday, when the banks are closed. Or you could take another couple of days off work and have a long weekend. So in Spanish, you'd say hacer puente. But we would say, well, we'll take a long weekend, or we'll have a long weekend. So you extend the weekend to include the holidays.
Another important expression related to New Year is on the stroke of midnight. What happens on the stroke of midnight on New Year's Eve?
The chimes of Big Ben. So the stroke, it's not to stroke a dog. It's when the clock ticks exactly to midnight and the second hand joins the minute hand and the hour hand at exactly midnight on the stroke of midnight. And that's where you hear the chimes of the clock, Big Ben.
Quite often people have a countdown. They count up to that moment. So they go 10, 9, 8, etc. up to 1, and then boom, it's the stroke of midnight and everybody cheers and has a drink, etc. What might you see, Craig, at a New Year's Eve celebration?
New Year's Eve, you'd see people decorating their house before New Year, or probably with Christmas decorations left over. The phrasal verb to put up decorations, to put up, means to arrange them, to hang them from the ceiling, to have paper chains and other decorations, to decorate the Christmas tree, of course. So it's very popular in a house to see decorations and streamers at the stroke of midnight, and everyone's celebrating. Streamers go up into the air, coloured paper, and they make a big pop sound, and everybody celebrates the new year.
Yeah, they stream up in the air like a kind of stream of water. A stream is like a tiny little river. It looks like kind of water, although it's paper, going up into the air. And of course, you might make or propose a toast. Now, you're not asking somebody to eat some bread
with butter on it that's been toasted.
No butter, although that would be nice. But what does that mean, Craig, if you propose or make a toast?
It's a reason to have a drink. If you're celebrating, for example, someone gets married, or there's an anniversary, or Christmas, then you raise your glass, you lift your glass with your whiskey or whatever alcohol you're drinking, and you drink to something or someone. So I could propose a toast to Reza, for example, on his birthday, or I could propose a toast to the Queen if I was a fan of the Queen.
So you just say to Reza, for example, or you could say here's to Reza, or here's to the new year, or here's to a great time together.
Here's to your retirement, here's to your birthday, here's to
a great
health,
friendship,
happiness,
whatever.
and a happy new year.
You mentioned whiskey because we're thinking about the Scottish theme, but of course, not everybody drinks whiskey. A typical drink for Christmas and New Year, above all, is champagne. Or bubbly, as some people call it, bubbly, or champers.
Yeah, bubbly because it has bubbles, so it's bubbly.
Would you ever say champers?
I have a friend who says champers, and it kind of annoys me a little bit.
Is your friend an aristocrat from about 1945?
No, but he does like his alcohol. So he says, do you fancy some champers? Means, would you like some champagne? But I would prefer bubbly. I say, let's have some bubbly to celebrate the new year.
It sounds a little bit old-fashioned now, doesn't it? Champers. Like you're making fun if you say it.
Yeah. Another thing you will often see when countries celebrate New Year is fireworks. Fireworks, fuegos artificiales.
Yep.
And a firework display is when the public are watching the fireworks.
So any Valencians will be happy to hear that mentioned. Anything to do with fireworks. You know, as foreigners here in Valencia, Craig and I and other expats have been surprised at just how much and how liberally the Valencians use fireworks.
Yeah.
It's very much a part of Valencian culture, right?
Especially around children. Sometimes worries me a little bit.
Right? Well, would you believe it if I told you I have been to another European country, not a third world country, a European country in the European Union where they are far, far more careless. They don't take care with fireworks than Valencia. And can you guess where it is?
Poland?
Germany.
In Berlin.
In Berlin. It's very, very difficult to imagine. Germans? Aren't those people who love rules?
And regulations and instructions, you'd think they were very, very careful and safety conscious.
It is crazy at New Year in Berlin. What's more, a couple of years ago, I remember reading a newspaper article about it that had got so out of control that the council were thinking of banning fireworks altogether in New Year because people are so careless and dangerous with them, but they really are. It's not Germans thinking people are being careless and they're being too strict. No, people are crazy. People just go along the street with a firework in their hand and kind of point it at you and let it off. It's like, don't do that. I don't want to lose my eye. You know, they just go crazy. For one day of the year, Berliners seem to go crazy and they forget about all common sense and they just do whatever they want with fireworks on New Year's Eve. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I thought that I was in a dream and I was in some kind of fourth dimension, a country that wasn't quite Germany, but for some reason they spoke German because where were the rules? They just disappear on New Year's Eve. It's crazy.
Something that doesn't really go together, fireworks and beer. Not a good combination. An expression you may hear around this time is to bring in the new year. Bring in. So how would you bring in the new year? Well, you might have a meal, get the family together, raise a glass, have a couple of shots of whiskey, champagne to bring in the new year, which means to celebrate the new year.
And if you're a Berliner and possibly a Valencian, you'll bring it in with a bang. You'll start here with a bang, boom. So an explosion. Well, it doesn't only mean explosions. It means, in a fun way, having a party, going a bit crazy. That is to start the year with a bang.
And if you're going to celebrate, that often goes together with alcohol. And when you start to drink champagne and the bubbles go to your head, you may start to feel a bit tipsy. Tipsy. If you're feeling a bit tipsy, you're not drunk. You know what's happening. You're in control of yourself. You're just feeling a bit lightheaded.
So drunk is more extreme than tipsy, yeah?
Yeah, drunk you should definitely not be driving or operating heavy machinery or letting off fireworks.
And if you get very drunk, what will be the problem the next day, do you think?
Then you will possibly have a hangover. Una resaca, a hangover. A hangover. When you've had too much to drink and your head hurts and your stomach hurts and maybe you're sick. That's a hangover.
Craig, What do you know about New Year's resolutions?
I know they don't work because I make them every year and they're the same ones. And by the time I get to February, I don't keep any of them. So making a resolution is to make a promise to yourself or a vow, VOW. A vow is a very strong promise. You make wedding vows to your wife or husband when you get married. And you resolve, that's the verb, to resolve, to do things differently in the coming year, usually to improve yourself. So in what ways could you improve yourself?
You could cut something out of your diet. That means stop taking it, cut out alcohol, cut out red meat. Or if that's a bit too extreme, you could just maybe cut down on something, reduce the amount you take. So you could cut it out, give it up altogether, stop, or just cut down. Can you think of anything else you might do, Craig?
It's a very good time for goal setting. You set goals, you set life targets. For example, by my birthday in May, I resolve to lose 10 kilos. So there I've set a goal that's realistic and achievable, and there's a time limit on it. So many people set goals in January and they begin on the 1st of January on New Year's Day.
So you can make changes. You can focus on particular things. Focus on family, or focus on your career, focus on your studies. Or you could simply make lifestyle changes. You could go out and about more, cycle more, use the car less, or don't go to bed so late.
Practice your English more.
That would be the best of all.
I always make New Year's resolutions. I'm a sucker for New Year's resolutions. To be a sucker for something, it kind of sucks you in and you like doing it. And even though maybe it doesn't work, you do it every year. So every year I do make resolutions. Are you making any this year?
I never make New Year's resolutions.
Any reason?
No, I don't want to give myself stressful limits or targets. I don't.
That's cool.
But I admire Craig for doing it.
Even though I never achieve my goals.
It doesn't matter. I'm sure you partially achieve them. It's just generally the idea of self-improvement. He wants to make things better in his life. He wants to turn over a new leaf, to change the bad and only have the good. And I admire that.
It's also a time to reflect on the past and things that have passed in your life. So yes, you look forward to the new year, and in our case now in 2020, the new decade, but you also look back and you appreciate what you have and reflect on the year that has passed. And that really is what the song Auld Lang Syne is about. What does Auld Lang Syne mean, though?
The truth is, nobody knows exactly.
It's Gaelic, isn't it?
Yes, but no, sorry, it's not. No, it's not Gaelic. It's Scots English, which is not the same as Gaelic.
Okay.
It's not Irish or Scottish language. It's not, but it's a kind of language that was spoken in Scotland at one time, and nobody knows exactly what it means. Is the truth. There are theories about what it means. Some people think it means basically old, long since, if you kind of translate it. So from years ago, from days gone by. But that's only a theory. We don't actually know for sure that it definitely means that.
And it's based on a poem written by a famous Scottish poet called Robert Burns, Burns. If you want to read the poem, it's in the show notes at inglespodcast.com/292, which hopefully you'll be singing this New Year's Eve. If you're interested in the words to Auld Lang Syne, we've posted them in the show notes at inglespodcast.com/292. So go and read the original words of Robert Burns, and you'll know what you're singing on New Year's Eve.
Well, you'll know the words, but you might not understand them because they're quite difficult to understand.
But one very important thing to do at this time of year is to wish people Happy New Year in English. So you're going to wish them a happy or prosperous new year, which means you prosper in your life, in your health, maybe in financial terms. You just have a really good year. So what expressions could we use to wish people a happy new year, Reza?
Well, a classic is wishing you a new year filled with happiness and joy.
Or season's greetings, because maybe the people aren't religious. You don't want to wish them a happy Christmas. They might not be Christian. So season's greetings is very general. Season's greetings or happy holidays.
Or you could say, may all your wishes come true, or may all your dreams come true for New Year. That's a good one.
All the very best for the year ahead. So the year that's coming. All the very best for the year ahead.
Another one is, I hope the coming year brings you health, happiness, and success.
Have a fantastic new year. Now you can substitute the adjective fantastic with words like wonderful, smashing, incredible, amazing, or the very American awesome, which should be said awesome with a lot of accent on the awesome. Yeah. Have an awesome new year.
And notice that smashing is very English.
Yeah.
If you say that in America, they'll say, what?
You're going to smash the glasses? No. Have a smashing new year means have a great, wonderful, incredible new year. And that's what we wish to you. We hope your new year is full of good things, especially health and happiness. And now it's your turn to practice your English. What are your New Year plans? We'd be very interested to know. Or if you're listening after the New Year, what did you do to celebrate the New Year? Reza, how can they contact us by voice message?
Yes, why not record yourself? Send us a voice message to speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. Or if you prefer, you could send us an email.
Yes, you can write emails to me, Craig, C-R-A-I-G, at inglespodcast.com, or emails to Reza at belfastreza@gmail.com.
And don't forget to visit the online store, which is store.mansioningles.net.
And before we go, a huge thank you to all of you who are supporting us and helping us create this podcast on Patreon. You can become a Patreon supporter. Go to Patreon, patreon.com/Ingles podcast, and you get automatic access to recent transcriptions of the podcast.
We'd like to name all our Patreon sponsors, but we haven't got time. But you can see their names on the show notes. Isn't that right, Craig?
That's right. You can see everybody's name on the show notes who are supporting the podcast. And a special thank you to people who have joined us this month. That's Juan Jesus Vilchez Padilla. Thank you, Juan Jesus. And José Manuel Flores Gamez. Thank you very much, José Manuel. On next week's episode, we'll be speaking about English expressions for awkward and uncomfortable situations. So we're going to help you avoid those uncomfortable, difficult situations with some expressions you can use. Until then, have a wonderful and safe New Year's Eve. Thank you for listening this week. Until then, it's goodbye from Reza.
And it's bye-bye from Craig.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.
We too have run about the slopes and picked the daisies fine. But we've wandered many a weary foot since Auld Lang Syne. We too have paddled in this stream from morning sun till dine, but seas between us broad have roared since Auld Lang Syne. And there's a hand, my trusty friend, and give me a hand o' thine, and we'll take a right goodwill draught for Auld Lang Syne.
Very well read, with a slight Scottish accent, which I thought was really nice.
Well, probably Northern Irish, which does have things in common with Scottish accents. Yeah.